Welcome to this presentation of the 2018 Kansas Assessments Test Security, Ethics, and Administration Training. I appreciate you taking the time to listen and review the information that will be shared with you in this video. All USD 400 Smoky Valley employees who have a role in providing supervision, proctoring, or administration of the state assessments must complete this training session and sign an agreement to abide by guidelines form. More information about this requirement will be shared at the end of the training. As noted on the screen, this training is designed to assure that local educators are following security and ethics guidelines so that the testing program is valid and reliable. Please listen carefully as we review these procedures in the following slides. Please note the following acronyms and vocabulary as they will be referenced throughout this presentation. You have received an email from your test coordinator that provides a copy of the Kansas Assessment Examiner's Manual. You are encouraged to download a copy of this manual to your computer for future reference, or to print a hard copy of those sections you need for reference. In particular, sections 3, 4, and 5 of the manual contain important instructions and guidelines for those staff who will directly supervise or proctor students in a testing situation. Please review these items. Contact your building principal if you have any questions about the information in this manual. By email, you have also received a copy of the KSDE State Assessment Fact Sheet. You have also received a hard copy of this fact sheet from your principal. Please refer to that fact sheet now while we review details of your responsibilities during testing sessions. The front of the fact sheet outlines the duties and responsibilities of the district and building test coordinators. For most of you watching this, you will want to turn over to the back of this fact sheet. First, please pause this video presentation and read through the section called Educator Test Proctor Responsibilities. Please resume the video when you have finished reading that section. On your screen, you will see 5 highlighted points of emphasis, and it is important that you understand each of these. Active supervision of testing sessions is important for several reasons. We want to be sure students are authentically engaged in the test they are taking, and it allows us to be proactive in recognizing any technical problems that may be impacting a student's test experience. It is important that students know they are to wait until the test proctor looks at the review end screen before finishing their test. It is permissible for the test proctor to remind students to complete all questions on the test. It is not permissible to review test items individually. Finally, never save, store, or share test items. Do not recreate test items on paper or take screenshots or photos of test items on student computers. There are specific procedures to follow if you find there is an error or mistake on a particular test item. This will be reviewed later in the presentation. Now, please pause this video and read over the sections called Acceptable Practices and Unacceptable Practices that are on the fact sheet. Please resume the video when you are done. Again, some points of emphasis are provided on the slide you see. Many of the unacceptable practices noted on your fact sheet pertain to the use of test items as instructional or review materials. Please be advised that coaching or cueing behaviors by adults, even ones used routinely in daily instructional practice, should not be allowed. It is permissible to encourage a student to complete all test questions, and as an example, you could respond to a student with something like this. Choose the answer you think is best. There is one correct or best answer for each question. Carefully reread the question or rework your problem. In general, refrain from providing cues that would be suggestive of a correct answer or to review or edit a response to a test item. We understand this can be a judgment call of where the line is between lowering the frustration level of a student and improperly aiding the student. A good guideline might be to think, if a KSDE monitor was in the room, would I answer this student's question? Let's now take a look at some of the best practices in testing environments in our classrooms or computer labs. Instructional aids, such as charts, posters, or other displays, may need to be covered or removed from the test setting if the materials give advantage to students during tests. Manipulatives are another area where there is often confusion. The two resources listed on the screen provide the best places to go to confirm what is allowed. In general, students can self-create fact sheets, graphic organizers, memory devices, etc. for their own use. Instructional materials such as texts, dictionaries, etc. are generally not allowed. The rules for the use of calculators and math manipulatives are particularly specific, so if you are responsible for proctoring a math assessment, please be sure to use the resources that are shared here on this screen. In particular, if you are monitoring a high school math assessment, there are new rules regarding the use of calculators. As a reminder, this presentation was also emailed to you as a PowerPoint document, and you can access links to these resources from there. In the days leading up to testing, the building test coordinator will provide test proctors with some important information. In particular, you will get a list of student usernames and passwords. Students use these login credentials when they access the Kite client on their computer. A student will use the same username and password for every Kansas assessment they take this year. The login credential that changes every day is called the daily access code. The student uses this in conjunction with their username and password to open a test session on the Kite client. The daily access code changes every day and is different for each content, test, and grade level. Your building test coordinator will provide you the daily access code each day that you are testing. This is why it is important to communicate with your test coordinator when changes in testing schedules are considered. Without the correct codes, your students will not be able to access tests on the Kite client. As noted on the screen, Section 5 of the Kansas Assessment Examiner's Manual provides more information about beginning and ending tests, as well as the script of instructions that you will provide to students just prior to testing. Due to a variety of factors, it may be necessary to reactivate a student's test session. This may occur because of a service interruption in our internet, which might kick the student out of the Kite client, or perhaps the student has to leave the test unfinished for some reason. In these cases, if the student attempts to log back into Kite within 90 minutes of the original interruption, the student should be able to use the same username, password, daily access code, and re-enter the test where they left off. If, however, it has been longer than 90 minutes, contact your building test coordinator and request a reactivation. You will need to provide some basic information to the coordinator because we have to maintain a log of these events. Generally, they will just need to know the name of the student, the grade level, which content test to reactivate, and a reason for reactivating. Sometimes, due to circumstances, it may be necessary to move a student away from a testing situation. Just keep notes on the reason for doing so and contact your building test coordinator. When testing can resume, the session will be reactivated for that time. Let's now discuss the issue of testing accommodations for students. All students taking Kansas assessments have access to a suite of tools as part of the regular testing experience. This includes access to online calculators, highlighting tools, a periodic table, text-to-speech audio, and whole screen magnification as just examples. No paperwork must be filed or permissions granted for students to use these tools. On page 62 of the Kansas Accommodations Manual, you can find a list of all the universal tools available to students. On page 63 of that manual, there is a list of accommodations available to students with a 504 plan, an ELL plan, an IEP, or other specialized plan of need. In order for a student to access or use these tools and resources, a team of educators must file a Personal Needs Profile, or PNP. This form is available from the Building Test Coordinator. Carefully review this slide for the types of accommodations that are appropriate in various settings. Professional judgment is often used in these situations to respond to a student's request. As noted before, the guidelines for allowable manipulatives for the math assessment can be tricky, so be sure to review the guidelines provided in the link shown on this slide. You may want to consider providing students an opportunity to interact with the online test environment prior to actual testing days. If so, the Kite interactive demo will give you a chance to either project sample test items on a screen for all students to watch, or you can have students individually log into the demo site and practice navigating the test format. Use the link on this screen to learn how to access the interactive demo. This site is not used for practicing for the content of test items or for reviewing concepts prior to testing. This concludes our training session on Kansas Assessment Security, Ethics, and Guidelines. A hard copy of the Agreement to Abide by Guidelines form has been provided to you by your principal. Please fill this form out and return it to your principal no later than February 28th. All educators who have a role in the Kansas assessment program must verify training and affirm agreement to follow these principles. Also, please use the resources that have been provided to you in this presentation, in the email that was sent to you, as well as the hard copies of file materials that have been shared with you. All of these resources can be helpful in making sure that you follow the guidelines that we have talked about today. If you have any questions about the assessment program, please reach out to your building principal.